Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second round of the workshop series covering the elder abuse through a ethnocultural lens. We are so happy for those of you that are able to join us today and so very excited to welcome our guest who will be delivering today's workshop. My name is Elizabeth Lee, and I'm the Education Coordinator with the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council. So before we get started, and I go over a little bit of what we do with the council, we'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement today. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today, and those who have gone before us. I am committed to doing my best to foster safe and respectful spaces free of abuse, neglect, and harm. All my relations. So welcome, everyone. For those of you who are not familiar with the council, the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council, I won't take too much time today because both Stephanie and I will do a brief introduction, but Dr. Rose Joudi has so much material to cover in a short period of time. So if any of you require any further information on the council or the work that Stephanie's group with Healthy Aging, with the core platform, things that we're going to introduce you to today, there will be a resource section at the end where you'll have all of our information available to reach out to us at any time. So please feel free to do so. Briefly, the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council, we were developed in 2002. And what we are is we have a group here in Alberta who are joined together with a group of professionals to increase awareness in supporting the community response to elder abuse. If you're able to check our website, and we'll give that website to you at the end of today's session, you'll notice that there's so many resources. There's an excellent resource guide for those of you, working with older adults and seniors in the community that may be experiencing elder abuse. There's also training and awareness sessions available, such as taking action against elder abuse, as well as the neighbors, friends, and family, It's Not Right, as well as so many other resources available for you to check out. So please go onto our website and find out resources that can support you throughout the province. So for this week, this week is Victims and Survivors of Crime Week. And this week aims to raise public awareness of the issues victims of crime face and the services available to them. We've been funded through Justice Canada and are so happy to welcome Dr. Rose Joudi to deliver the presentation she's going to deliver today. But before we officially welcome Dr. Joudi, I'd like to ask Stephanie Bansky just to give a brief introduction and to kind of tell folks all the things that you can look for on the core platform and with Healthy Aging Alberta.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, I'm Stephanie Bansky. I'm an engagement and communication specialist here at Healthy Aging Alberta. Healthy Aging Alberta is an Alberta initiative that is the purpose is to convene and build a network of community-based senior serving organizations and sector allies. So we are an initiative that is province-wide, that has various different opportunities for connection, collaboration, sector building, policy development for the sector. And our goal is to really unite and bring together the sector so that we could have our strongest voice. We also collaborate on national levels. So the Core Alberta platform is one of our initiatives to bring folks together, and you can connect in groups, such as our elder abuse group here. You can see on the screen that we have the folks in this room are part of. So we invite you to join us in that group. But we also have other resources, reports, news, trainings and events calendar, and funding opportunities. And this Core Alberta platform is also connected to Core BC and Core National. So I do see a few of you tuning in from other parts in the country. So just so you know, we collaborate with United Way BC and Healthy Aging BC to run the Core BC and Core National platforms, which also have the same similar types of content and resources. So please join us on those platforms. It's free membership, and you can get more resources and connections for your work.
So great. Thank you, Stephanie. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Rose Joudi. I will let this lovely lady introduce herself and give you her background. And once again, you're in for such a treat this afternoon. You're going to get so much information in a very short period of time. So enjoy and thank you again. And also, I'd like to mention before we get started is that we will be providing a post survey for everyone. So that will be coming to you as well after today's session, along with all of the slides that Rose will be presenting today. So enjoy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much and good afternoon, everybody. I think it's awesome to have some cheerleaders like Liz and Stephanie on your side. It's always great to see people supporting you as well in the work that you're doing. Some of you might know me or may have heard of some of the conversations I've had in the past. But today is a really special day. These sessions that we've been doing are very important. And it's very exciting as well because the sharing of information that I'm going to be doing today actually is coming out from the project that I have been currently working on. That would focus on, of course, ethnocultural elder abuse. So my name is Dr. Rose Joudi. I wear a few hats that are different sometimes, but the same as well. I'm an academic and I teach on the psychology of aging, focusing on ethnocultural individuals and communities. And I'm also the research lead here at CARIA, focused on completing a project on ethnocultural elder abuse. So it really happened to work out really well today that the conversation is about trying to understand the importance of collaboration and the power of collaboration. Usually when we talk about collaboration, we think within or between organizations. But what I'm also going to emphasize and encourage you to think about today is collaborating as well with the ethnocultural communities that you are working with them for. And so before I start, I'm always reminded when I talk with organizations and also community members that when we are developing programs and or plans that include people that we are serving and working with, that we actually involve them in hearing their voice and engaging them in that conversation. And I'm reminded of the saying, nothing about me without me, because even in the conversation that I'm going to be sharing with you today, the findings and the outcomes really was a result of me doing outreach to ethnocultural community members, leaders, and spiritual and religious leaders, and asking them, what is it that you need from us as organizations that could help you feel more settled in the city or the province or the country, that would make you feel included in the conversations, that would make you feel more comfortable accessing the resources that are already available in many of these organizations, and that makes you feel that you are, as a person or an older adult, welcomed in this healthy aging process and experience. So that nothing about me without me was very important. I also just wanted to do a refresher, and I know that you're already all experts and pros at understanding what elder abuse is, but just in case, I think it's also important for us to kind of highlight. This is the 2002 Government of Alberta definition of elder abuse. Elder abuse is any intentional or unintentional, actually, form of reckless act, willful, negligent disregard to a person in a situation of trust. And that could be because of the fact that they are part of the family, or that they could also be a paid caregiver. So that also includes people who we employ to look after our family members, because the assumption is that we are trusting them to look after and meet the needs of this older adult as well. The Government of Alberta has added a chronological age of 65, and that was put in place as a result of the really requirements and the policies in which older adults or seniors are identified as those who are 65 plus and therefore accessing various resources. I do want to highlight, however, from an ethnocultural point of view, the age 65 doesn't really resonate greatly with many ethnocultural communities. From my conversations with them, and for some of you here who come from ethnocultural backgrounds, you will notice that an older adult at times is a designated a title or an experience, not because of a chronological age, but because of their placement or their role within that community or family. And so when I asked ethnocultural older adults, when is it that they would be considered an older person or an older adult? Most of them actually said 50, 50 plus, around 55. And so I just wanted to mention that to you in case your programs, your offerings dictated a 65 age bracket, which might be slightly problematic and challenging for those who are not 65, who are younger, yet are culturally considered an older adult. From the definition, of course, as you can see, this person, this act, this reckless, intentional or unintentional act is causing physical, psychological, mental, financial, sexual harm to the individual as well. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that this is the definition of elder abuse as based on the government of Alberta's 2022 definition. And these are the various types of elder abuse that are highlighted and mentioned in Western definition as well. So again, the definition is Western, and there's a reason behind me highlighting and stressing that. These are the types of elder abuse that are identified in this Western definition or the Western definitions, whether we're talking about the World Health Organization, the Government of Canada, and even the Government of Alberta. So the types of elder abuse include the ones that you can see and the ones that I'm sure you are very knowledgeable about. However, after talking to more than 165 ethnocultural members in the province of Alberta, these were the additional forms of elder abuse that they also highlighted. Many of them talked about spiritual, religious, and cultural elder abuse, which is when they are isolated spiritually, religiously, and culturally from their ethnic communities or from maintaining that important component of that ethnocultural identity of theirs. Another component that they talked about was abandonment. And this is not necessarily leaving them in a mall, for example, which sometimes does happen, but this is really abandoning them in their own home. So they could be living on their own, and none of their family members or community members ask about them or check in on them. And that they considered a form of elder abuse, and they referred to it as a form of abandonment or abandonment and a form of elder abuse. The interesting thing that this research came up with was that ethnocultural communities, and I'm talking about 25 different ethnic groups that I had talked with in the past few months, almost all of them talked about elder abuse, not in that literal translation component. So they didn't, when I asked them, does your culture or does your language have the word elder abuse? The majority of them, and most of them said no. So they don't really use the word elder abuse translated into their language, yet they used other words such as mistreated, disrespected, neglected, socially isolated. Those were the forms of terms or the words that they would use to explain that it is elder abuse. And so I think that's also something important to keep in mind. You will be working with older adult clients from ethnocultural backgrounds that might not necessarily identify with the word elder abuse or that they're experiencing elder abuse, because either it's not a translated word in their language, even if you have it translated literally, because the nuances, the words they use are different to explain that they are being abused or mistreated or neglected. And those would be the words that they will be using, predominantly disrespect, neglected, mistreated, or abandoned, or socially isolated, or culturally isolated as well. So again, it's really important for us who are working with ethnocultural clients to be very sensitive to and respectful of the words and the experiences of our clients and these individuals, because they are not the same as the ones that are predominantly experienced by mainstream Caucasian, Western, or European clients as well. So why is it important for us to collaborate with ethnocultural communities? I think it's very important for us to initially understand that in order for us to be successful as an organization, and in order for our programs to be successful, and in order for us to understand what the best practices are and how we can actually serve the community the best way possible, that we have these open conversations and dialogues with them. I think it's very important for us to understand that our clients do come with a lot of strengths and capabilities and knowledge and experiences. And when we explore them in culturally respectful and honoring ways, we will find that our clients have more strengths and abilities than we initially think they do. And when we do that, we are actually looking at our clients from a strength-based lens. It's about what they can do and what they have to offer, as opposed to what they cannot do. And the assumption that organizations are here to come in and sweep them and, you know, and save them, etc. I think that's very belittling and devaluing of their experiences. And if you are an organization that is very, I guess, cognizant of your trauma-informed lens and trauma-informed care, then you will know that looking at your clients from that strength-based lens is very important. And this also includes understanding how you can collaborate with these community members. And I absolutely respect and appreciate the fact that we are, as organizations, very underfunded and under-resourced and stretched as thinly as possible. However, what I found in doing this project is it was a one-man show for me. So I was actually the person who was doing the outreach. I was the person who was doing the producing of the information and the sharing of the information and the collecting of information and the analyzing. And so I actually realized it is doable, even if you have one or two people on your team. It does require a considerable amount of patience, however, and it does require creativity. Yet the outcome, the end result, is absolutely worth it. So when you're collaborating with your colleagues from various organizations, you're working on establishing that relationship and that bridge of understanding. If we cannot offer, or we don't have this particular service that our client needs, can you offer it for them? Or do you have the resources to offer it? And helping that client is basically what we all, our aim is and the goal is, regardless of what organization we work for. And in addition to that, of course, collaborating with ethnocultural communities helps us leverage their strength and their resources. And so if we are under-resourced, if we don't have the number of people to help us produce or even disseminate some of that information, then looking at the ethnocultural community members and identifying specific leaders that this ethnocultural community would listen to, respects, and values, then you can leverage that strength, that identification, and provide that individual or those individuals with whatever it is that you want to share with the ethnocultural communities. And what you're also doing as a result is you're building trust. You're empowering your clients. They may have been victims or survivors of abuse. And with that being said, they would have potential capabilities and coping mechanisms and resources that would help them navigate this journey of theirs. And the collaboration that you would have with your clients only enhances that building of trust with them. and honoring of their experiences as well. So that collaboration component is very important, and I needed to kind of highlight it in a different way, just to help break down this notion of collaboration. So when you're looking at your ethnocultural community members from that strength-based lens, you are honing on their capabilities and leveraging their strengths and their resources. And that helps a lot because you're bridging that gap that sometimes might be a bit problematic, especially if you are wanting to do further outreach. I'm finding through communicating with ethnocultural members is that some of them, and in particular older adults who have chronic conditions, they could be physical, mental, or are lacking in terms of knowing how to navigate transportation systems, or who are fully dependent because of various barriers like language on other people, including their family, to help them socialize and get out of the house, is that even if our organizations have a number of resources provided for those older adults who are isolated, these older adults are unable to attend these lessons or sessions or workshops because of those various barriers. And so what I'm getting from these ethnocultural communities, and in particular older adults, and I'm talking about those who are 70 plus in particular, is that they are asking for organizations to come to them, as opposed to assuming that all of our older adults can come to us. And that makes complete sense. And so when we have more of that open eye kind of understanding that it's not just about us assuming that our community members will come to us, it's figuring out who are not coming to our sessions or workshops or our lessons, and why are they not coming? And it's definitely not because they don't need it, because they do. It's possibly because of those various barriers. And if you identify what those barriers are, then maybe you can find a better way to provide them and help them access that knowledge that you have to offer, or that resource that you have to offer, but in ways where you're going to them as opposed to expecting them to come to you. And with that, you're also building that effective understanding and that effective resource, and you're utilizing the skills that that community has. And so you see that there's a power in collaborating, and of course highlighting the importance of collaboration. They really go hand in hand. There is strength in that collaboration with ethnocultural community members and that partnership, and it definitely does, in the long term, it pays really, really well. So the objectives of our conversations throughout today is to increase awareness. And this is a reciprocal two-way road, in my opinion. Some of you here are from ethnocultural communities, and some of you here are from professional organizations. And it would be beautiful and wonderful for us to collaborate together and work hand in hand and not work in silos. We don't need to sometimes recreate something that has already been created. And so it's important to understand that many of our ethnocultural members actually do not know and are not aware of some of the resources and supports in place that our organizations have for them. And so what you're doing with this outreach is hopefully realizing the importance of doing that further additional step of outreach and collaboration. Also, the hope is, with understanding why it's important to collaborate, is to enhance our understandings. What are the needs of our clients, and what do they want from us, as opposed to assuming that we know what is best for them. And it's an empowerment objective as well, where you are empowered yourself in knowing, now I know, now I am more culturally sensitive or aware and mindful and empathetic of what the needs of my clients are, and the fact that I don't know everything about everything. And that's absolutely fine, but also trying to understand, how can I enhance the tools that my client already has and their coping mechanisms that they already have developed, because they have experienced traumatic events. They have gone through so many experiences that were very challenging, and they have walked through that journey of theirs despite those experiences? And how can I empower them to live the best life they can? And I think that's also an aim that we all should aim for too. And promoting that collaboration is important, and strengthening the networks that are existing or building on and enhancing those networks, whether they're professionally right now, if you can share that information, or you want to connect with people, or strengthen that relationship that you have with ethnic community members. And the word empowerment has been tossed around quite a bit. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight what it really means. It's not just a fancy word, as I mean, it is, but it's not just that. Empowerment is actually the practice of motivating others to be their best, to think about what tools do I need to give my client, my ethnocultural older adult or person who may have gone through hardship, has experienced various forms of abuse, and how can I help build on and scaffold the strengths and capabilities that they come with, and make them even stronger, and help them, support them to live the best life possible. And so that's what really empowerment is. It's to motivate people to be their best and do their best, and give them agency, and give them control, and give them independence to make their own decisions for themselves. It's hard for us sometimes to not continue to push our clients because we think that we know what's best for them and we want the best for them. But the reality is we have to be respectful of those boundaries, and be mindful that to respect our client means that we have to give them the keys to their agency, and say, you know what, you're in the driver's seat. I'm a companion. You can lean on me when you want. You can ask me for directions if you need to, but I'm trusting you in this process. I'm trusting that you will know when you will need to turn around and say, I need your help, and this is how I need your help. And this is a trauma-informed lens that you're doing as well. You're looking at your client, not from a what is wrong with you, to being more curious and non-judgmental and saying, what has happened to you and how can I help and support you? And so that lens is an empowerment lens. It's offering them the keys and the tools to advance their lives when they feel they're ready and when they need to. This might be an odd way of attending a presentation for some of you, or a conversation, but I actually do sometimes start from the bottom up, or from the back onwards. And so I actually start with the conclusion. And here it's because I realize that sometimes time is not my friend, and I run out of time. So I want to give you the golden nuggets before we run out of time. So the golden nuggets here are that the term elder abuse, as we use it in our Western culture or society here in Canada, is a Eurocentric term. And my focus is ethnocultural older adults. And I want to kind of highlight that to respect First Nations and Indigenous experiences, I'm not looking at that group, because that is not my area of expertise, and I would leave it to someone who is an expert and knowledgeable and from that community. And so when I talk about ethnocultural older adults, I'm talking about those who are immigrants, who are refugees, who have culture, religion, values, language that differ from mainstream society, but who are not First Nations or Indigenous peoples. However, when you're looking at the term elder abuse, the majority of ethnocultural older adults do not identify with that word. So that is something important for us to think about, especially when you're doing presentations, workshops, training sessions, pamphlets, flyers, whatever it is that you're using. I would be very mindful of the words that you're using, because words have power and they can turn off people. And so the way that you're wording your flyers and inviting ethnocultural people or people in general has to be very, you have to be very mindful of the words that you're using. For example, when I go to ethnocultural communities to talk about elder abuse, I don't say I'm here to talk about elder abuse. I say I am here to talk to you about healthy aging, promoting healthy aging, and promoting and enhancing healthy relationships as we grow older. And through developing that conversation with them, and sometimes it takes me 2 and 3 times of visits with this particular ethnocultural group. And I take my time because I'm building rapport and I'm respecting that they want to know me and trust me before they open up, because it is a difficult topic. It is a very sensitive one to them. So when we talk about elder abuse, I say I'm talking about healthy aging and healthy relationships and how we can enhance them as we grow older. And then at the end, I say, and sometimes relationships don't end up being healthy. What does that look like to you? Talk to me about what an unhealthy relationship looks like for an older person. And so I open the door for the people who are attending this conversation from ethnocultural communities to tell me, to educate me, because I am the learner and I am learning from them. And what we're doing here is we're building on that cultural compassion and empathy and competence to understand that the way that we think about the world and the lens that we view the world and make sense of it differs, because we are all diverse in our experiences, in our personalities, and our knowledge and our understandings. And to be respectful of that is very important. So you are culturally compassionate, and there's cultural humility in actually saying, I don't really know a lot about this culture, yet I am willing to learn, and I'm willing to learn from you. So teach me about your culture. Tell me how your culture sees this unhealthy relationship. How is it that we can help people from your community feel safe in those circumstances and situations? How can we as an organization, and what is it that you need from us? How can we develop something that works for you as a community? And in those, reciprocal dialogues, I guarantee that you are not only going to build on that relationship and they're going to trust you and open the door to you and your organization, but they are going to feel valued as community members, and they're wanting to give as citizens and people of the community as well. The other part, of course, is to look at your clients, whether they're victims and survivors of abuse, from that strength-based lens, right? So it's about what they want from you, when they want it, as opposed to assuming that we know when the time is and what it is that they want from us. And that will help them gradually build on that trust with you, and it will definitely build on that healing process as well. And the reality is there's absolutely no end to our learning about others, learning about our clients, and them learning about us. I am from the Middle East, and so I am bilingual in Arabic and English. And we have a saying in my culture that says, we learn from the cradle to the grave, which means that there's no end to learning. We are learning every day, and we are learning right now, hopefully together. I do have to, again, apologize for the fact that there is quite a bit of information here. So don't panic when you see that I have a case study. This is a case study that, of course, because the slides will be available for you, you're going to have that. And this could be something that you could do with your team. So I have provided you with a couple of exercises. One is a case study. Mrs. Gupta, who arrived from Southeast Asia, immigrated, part of that family sponsorship, to reside with her daughter and son-in-law, and she is dependent on them. And they are restricting her in her daily activities, socializing, finances, and accessing healthcare. A friend or a neighbor of hers appeared to notice that she did seem to be down and she was missing attending some spiritual and cultural events. And Mrs. Gupta confided to that person that she was being mistreated. And so remember, ethnocultural communities will not use more or less the word elder abuse, but they will use things like, I am mistreated, I feel isolated, I'm not comfortable or happy living in the family environment. And those would be some red flags to think about, even if you're working with them. And so the friend was concerned, but she was also worried that if she were to interfere, as usually happens within some ethnocultural communities, family matters are family matters. And sometimes ethnocultural groups don't feel it's respectful to interfere if it is a family issue. And so the neighbor was concerned. However, she was worried that her son-in-law might retaliate, either to impacting Mrs. Gupta and maybe hurting her or affecting her even more, or retaliate and affecting the neighbor herself. So this is the case study I have. And then there are 2 slides of questions that you could use with your team as well. And these questions are clearly identified in terms of where the conversation might need to go. So what are the signs of abuse? And again, this could be something really important with your team to identify. There are hidden signs and there are visible signs of abuse. There are words that might not be used. So what is the body language that we're going to look at? Sometimes the nonverbal stuff. What are the cultural influences here? What are the resources that you have that are culturally compatible that might meet the needs? Do you have resources that support older adults who've been sponsored by their adult children, right? They need accommodation, they need financial assistance. Can you provide them with any form of access to those supports? What legal supports that will be culturally compatible to the person that you can provide? And the other discussion question looks at engagement. Your clients may want to be involved with their ethnic community members, and some of them might not. And so I think it's very important to ask them, what is it that you would like us to do? How can we help you? How can we support you? You're opening the door for them to tell you what they would need from you. Sometimes, and I'd have it with a client, that all they want to do is just talk. Don't do anything. Just let it off my chest. I just want it off my shoulders. That's it. Don't do anything. And this is particularly tricky, right? Because you do want to do something, but again, it really has to be in the hands of the person. And also you can consult with your supervisor if you think it's something that is putting this person in danger. However, allowing the person to have control and agency and independence in what they would like you to do is very important. You're validating their experiences, but you're also validating their agency as an individual as well. Our older adults in particular who are sponsored by their adult children are worried about what would happen to their adult child. There is a stigma in ethnocultural communities that I raised this child, and therefore this is a reflection of me and my upbringing. And so there's a shame attached to acknowledging that my own child who I raised is actually abusing me or was mistreating me. And so that is one of the main factors that prevents an older adult, an ethnocultural older adult, from reporting being abused or mistreated, because it's their adult child. And many of them are afraid of what would happen to that adult child. I don't want them to go to prison. I don't want them to be incarcerated. I don't want their name to be dragged in our ethnic community, because that would be shameful for them and for me as well, and the family too. So there are complex nuances. There's a huge intersectionality when it comes to elder abuse in ethnocultural communities. And the hope is that this conversation today will help you think about some of those things. So ethnocultural older adults, when they talk about elder abuse, what does it look like? I just wanted to kind of highlight, when I talk about ethnocultural people, I'm talking about a group of individuals who differ, as I mentioned before, culturally, religiously, linguistically from mainstream society. To understand why it is important to respect diversity of older adults helps us be better and do better at what we're already doing amazingly at. It's so very important to also keep in mind, Canada is opening the doors to immigrants. We also have thousands and thousands of refugees that are entering the country every year, which means that we have a group of people who are either entering the country as older adults or who are coming in and aging as a result of them immigrating and settling in the country as well. And therefore, they're not all going to be the same. They're not all going to be having the same needs. And so it's very mindful to be privy to what those needs are in order to ensure that those people also feel safe and have equitable access to the resources that we provide. And then just to highlight again, there's a difference between older adults who immigrated as an older person to the country and those who immigrated younger and aged in the country. They are two different groups of people, and their needs will be the same. Their understandings and perspectives of aging will be different, and their needs are going to be different as well. So just to keep that in mind, that it's not a one size fits all, and we're not lumping all ethnocultural people together, that sometimes we need to understand how long has this person been in the country for. With that being said, I have spoken to older adults who have been in Canada anywhere from 5 months to 50 years. And what I'm finding, fascinatingly enough, is that they're all struggling. Even the person who has been here for 50 years is still struggling to age well, to understand how they can live a healthy life. And, you know, the reality is when you're here younger, you're sucked into a different lifestyle. You're working, you're paying the bills, you're paying your mortgage, you're doing the rent, you're raising your children, you're saving a bit of money and you're sending it home. And so by the time you age, you really realize that sometimes you don't know how you're aging here or how the aging experience looks like. And so just because a person has been here for decades actually doesn't mean that they have figured it out. Even as a person who's been living here for a decade or more than a few decades, they are still struggling just as much sometimes as a person who's been here recently as well. So asking them how long they've been here might be very helpful to understand what kind of resources and supports they need. Looking at your clients from that strength-based lens is important, and I've already highlighted that, so I'm not going to dabble with this for too long, but these are some of the strengths that your clients can come with. They have resilience, they have coping mechanisms, adaptable. I mean, there's no one adaptable like somebody who had to move to a different country that speaks a different language, that has a different weather and climate, that has navigation systems and health systems and education systems and legal systems that are hugely different from back home. A lot of the older adults that I have spoken to are low literacy adults, and they have low education, and some of them are illiterate in their own language. These systems are very complex, and they need more than just you interpreting and translating those documents. Because remember, if they are illiterate in their own language, they can't read those translated documents in their own language. So you need to find creative ways to reach out to some of these communities. And that's why I say outreach is very important. Verbal communication is very important. And finding ways that would meet their needs based on their literacy abilities and their and other barriers. So what are some of these barriers? Well, language barriers at the forefront, of course. Many older adults are struggling to access English lessons and classes, and some of them are prevented from accessing it because of their children or their adult children, because they're full-time babysitters or they're full-time house cleaners under the roof of their adult child's house. So therefore, they're also socially and culturally isolated. They are also experiencing settlement stress, and that settlement stress really doesn't go away. I am an immigrant and a child of immigrants, and every now and then something makes me panic because I don't know what it is or I don't understand the system. And so, let alone an older adult who, in addition to having to navigate new societies and systems and languages and weather, they also have to understand, what are my rights here in the country? And they will not know their rights if, as organizations, you clarify what these rights are, or their sponsor, who usually is an adult child, clarifies it to them. And so whenever we take away information from ethnocultural older adults, they will remain in the dark and not in the know. So those are some of the challenges, and I'm sure you probably have various ideas of some of the challenges that your clients experience, but these are the ones mainly highlighted in research that focuses on ethnocultural older adults. So ethnocultural older adults are, according to research, and this is updated research as recent as actually 2023, they are more likely to experience elder abuse than Western European Caucasian older adults. And they're also more likely to not report it as well. They are more likely to also not identify being abused. So again, the nuances and the words that your clients use might be different. So, for example, I had a client who was a grandparent, and their adult children said, well, Mum, now that you have grandchildren like you wanted, you have to pay for the extracurricular activities because it's expensive. And this grandparent willingly did that. However, at some point they realized that maybe they don't want to do it every now and then, but they felt obligated because of that filial obligation and piety. And it's a cultural expectation sometimes. But if someone else heard that from the outside, they would probably identify that as a form of abuse. And that also includes babysitting and cleaning the house, for example, and being isolated as a result. So they don't express abuse the same way as an English-speaking person would. And so we're very cautious about ensuring that we are creative in finding out. So what is it that you like to do back home? What foods did you enjoy eating? Are you eating them now? Are you doing what you're enjoying, what you enjoy back home now? Those kind of curious questions, you're not necessarily asking directly, but you're indirectly asking your client about if they're missing out and if they're unhappy about that. And why is that happening? Is it intentional or is it unintentional? Ethnocultural older adults are more likely to lean into their culture and their ethnic identity and their religion or spiritual belief in times of hardship. And therefore, they are more likely to seek informal supports if they are experiencing challenges and hardships. So some of our older adults who are being abused or mistreated and taken advantage of by their own family members will not talk to the formal resources and supports and organizations such as us. They will lean on informal supports, and it could be extended family members or other family members or ethnocultural, religious and spiritual leaders as well, which is why I highlighted the importance of identifying leaders in communities and building a bridge and a relationship with them so they can lead their ethnic members to you if they felt that that is what they needed or if that's what they wanted, that the person wanted. So according to research, these risk factors are ones that have been highlighted in ethnocultural studies. And I just put an asterisk there with risk factors because they're complex. It's not easy as just stating them or seeing them in front of us. These risk factors intersect. They are complex. They could come and go. They could linger and they might not be identified as well. And these risk factors impact the person, your older adult, or their family member as well. I had a client who said, I don't want you to help me. I want you to help my son, my child. Because if you help them, then they won't abuse me or mistreat me. And so filial piety and obligation is huge in some of these ethnocultural communities, and including the family as a unit is very important as well. So culture can be actually both a protective factor because it enhances that social and cultural connection and internal resources, but it also could be a risk factor, which is by the mere fact that they are heavily leaning on their culture and their ethnic identity, they are afraid of or ashamed of talking about being mistreated and abused, and so you would never know about it. Their level of independence or dependence, how much do they lean on and rely on family members? Are they independent? Are they capable? Can they navigate the systems? Can they use public transportation? Do they know what the numbers are in case they needed help or accessing some of our resources? As I mentioned, their social isolation is huge as well. That is a huge risk factor for older adults, especially if they don't have ethnic community members checking in on them as well. Low levels of literacy and education seems to be a risk factor as well. So not knowing how to read or write, and also not knowing how to, in their own language or English as well. It makes them more dependent on others. Can you read this letter for me? Can you come with me to the doctor's appointment? Can you come with me to the organization's appointment? Remember, some of your clients might at times bring with them a family member as an interpreter or a translator, and that could be the same person who is actually mistreating them. So you have to also be very mindful of that and careful with the way you're asking questions as well, and just be cognizant of that. The way that they entered the country as well, refugees and sponsored older adults are more prone to being mistreated, in addition to the other factors like chronic condition, employment, their financial state, their levels of psychological well-being, etc. And so the rest of the slides that I have here, those talk about recognizing signs of elder abuse from an ethnocultural lens, and I've already kind of really addressed this. Your client will not talk to you the same way as a Western English-speaking person would when it comes to expressing that they are unhappy in their home. They might say, I'm not happy, or I feel lonely, or I am bored, right? So sometimes you have to really be an investigator and kind of tease out, what does that mean? How can we not make you bored? How can we bring you here to attend some of our sessions and things like that? They might need to trust you first, of course, before opening up. So you might want to think about, what is it that I can offer this person that is unrelated to potentially the abuse, but that is still beneficial for them? Sometimes I had people who said, I just want to come out and learn English. That 1 hour a day means I can go out, get on the bus and just be out of the house. And the reality is I have to go back to that same house and home again, where I'm mistreated or abused. And that's their reality, and that's what they want for that time being. Also, you might want to, again, and I mentioned this before, think about who's accompanying them, and what kind of relationship they have with them. So this filial piety is very important. It's one of the reasons why ethnocultural older adults do not disclose being abused or mistreated, because they have this huge obligation to ensure within their culture and ethnic community that everything is absolutely fine, and that shame and embarrassment and stigma doesn't come back on them in the way that they brought up their children. So, I think it's very important. This is research findings. Lei actually has a really great work that was done on Chinese Canadians. And so acknowledging that this abusive experience means that the person has to admit, my child has done this to me. And sometimes it's very hard. And to understand that there's intersectionality. There's their race, their culture, their immigration status, their knowledge about what's out there to keep them safe and support them. And also sometimes it's the words that they use and the level of abuse or mistreatment that they're experiencing that might prevent them or not from reaching out to you. And as I mentioned before, they might use words as mistreatment, neglect, disrespect, or isolated, and not elder abuse. And also, ethnocultural older adults are less likely to talk about sexual abuse. And they're less likely to identify with financial abuse. And this is also studies that was done by Walsh in 2016. And when we talk about disrespect as a form of abuse, it is actually identified differently than emotional and psychological abuse, which makes me wonder sometimes that we might need to adjust our definition based on our ethnocultural communities as well. So why do your clients struggle with either reporting or seeking support? Well, first and foremost, as I mentioned, it's that stigma, it's that shame, it's that embarrassment, it's that worry. What's going to happen to my adult child if I do speak up? What's going to happen to me if I do speak up? So I told you that I'm being mistreated or abused. What's next? Are you going to do something about it? Do you have the resources? And if you don't, then what's the point of me talking about it? And this was literally something that a person had told me in one of my conversations with them. What's the point if I do talk about elder abuse? What will you do? And if you can't do anything, then there's no point in me reporting it, because it's just going to make things more complicated for me back home. They also might come from a historical background where they have mistrust with authority. And so that building of that trust, that bridge is super important. And then they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And that's why I reiterate the importance of community outreach and really just going beyond our own comfort level and going, who is it that we need to see in our organizations and accessing the resources that we're not seeing. You might want to think about which ethnocultural communities are increasing in number in your community as well. And I know I've got not even 5 minutes at this point, but this is really wrapping it up. So these are some practical tools that I want to give you, or suggestions, sorry. You build community engagement and support. You do your cultural competency and humility training. You think about your outreach. You think about your partnership. You work on the trauma-informed lens of yours. You establish and map out who is it that is in our city that is increasing from that ethnocultural population. And how can we reach out to them and engage their voice in the discussion about what they can do and benefit from us? And then, of course, do those community events and grassroots advocacy and volunteering opportunities. So I will just give you this email, super important. So the healthyagingandunitedway.org email is very important. Please contact them if you have any questions and if you want to know any more. The core platform, of course, is great. These are the links and resources right at the end that you'll see on the slides as well. If you want this information in French, please email the Elder Abuse Alberta. This is a great organization, albertaelderabuse.ca. That's where the council is located at in terms of website. And then, of course, CARIA, which is the organization that I'm very grateful to work for, Healthy Aging Core, and my contacts. Thank you so much for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Joudi. On behalf of the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council, I'd like to say thank you so much for all of your hard work and research put into this area of elder abuse through an ethnocultural lens. So thank you so very much. For those of you that are able to stick around, and I know there may have been some more questions in the chat box, I also posted our Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council website for some information on a current grant that we have, a grant opportunity. So please check that out. If you have any questions, let me know. But we would like to open the floor. I know we only have a couple of moments. Dr. Joudi, are you able to stick around for a couple of minutes for some questions if anyone has any?
Yes.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll open the floor if any of you would like to make any comments or ask any questions.
We do have one in the chat. And it is asking, when you say legal support, what are, when you say that legal supports are culturally compatible, do you mean legal services that are appropriately accommodate cultural differences or services that provide remedies that are culturally acceptable?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Gop, and it's good to see you here in the conversation today. I mean, both of them, really. When we're talking about cultural compatibility and competence, when it comes to whatever resource you have, I think it's very important to understand what are the needs of the culture and how does this document or how does this information make sense to them, right? And when we're talking about low literacy older adults, we're really talking about what knowledge do they come with that is the base about their legal rights and how to keep them safe, and how can we build on that? And some of them actually don't have any of that information. And so you want to scaffold and you want to start from the bottom. Why it's important for you to understand what your legal rights are in Canada. How can they protect you? What information do you need in order for you to be protected and safe? And then, you go through that. And so it's always a great step to talk to community members and say, what is it that you would like for us to provide you when it comes to this particular topic in terms of knowledge? And how can we make that make sense for this particular community?
I think that's all the questions we had in the chat. So please feel free to unmute your mic or ask an additional question in the chat here if you have something else here.
And like I said, I will provide Stephanie with my slides, and so she'll be able to distribute those slides to you, and so you can use the case study. And also there were some questions discussion questions that you can use with your team as well at the end of the slides too.
Yes, so we'll send out this post recording and the slides early next week there after the long weekend.
Thank you.
And please make sure to complete our survey that we've put in the chat. And if you really enjoyed this elder abuse discussion, we do have a full group dedicated to this. And Dr. Joudi and Elizabeth are also part of that group. So please join us in the core platform. We have additional events coming up, one on June 6th. And yes.
And thank you so much once again. And thank you, Dr. Joudi. Another excellent job.
Thank you so much. I'm here tomorrow if you want to.
Yeah, that's right. Same time, same place.
Want to watch again live?
I have a comment actually. It's at the end of the session, so I'm late. So what I found is, a lot of seniors who come from back home, they live in a community. Like, I mean, when I compare here, I work with seniors here in Alberta, and it's quite different because they live in an extended family and they have a role to play to the end of their life. They take care of grandchildren. They still cook meals, for the family, and they have a role to play to the end of their life. They do what they can, and that's how they live. And here it's more technical, so more individualistic, and the family member comes to visit once in a while, right? So when we compare, the lifestyle of seniors here and there is quite different. And for them, they need more emotional support, and which is there, right? As you mentioned, they are illiterate because that time there was no education, right? Like, I mean, the limited school, university, and college, but it's still, they lead the way, it's a generation knowledge transfer kind of thing. But I see, the Western society need to learn some of this stuff, from the people from like Asian, community, how the older seniors people living, and they have more respect there. We talk about abuse and here, like, I mean, it's a big thing, right? But when we analyze this, things, there are a lot of strengths, positive stuff. We see that in extended family living. I think we need to learn from each other and kind of work around. Yeah, because I see that even my parents came here and they're not happy seeing the lifestyle here. Because my dad, he, you know, walk around in the community and everybody's welcoming, they force him to stop by and have a drink of coffee. He talks about politics and whatever different things in the community. They enjoy there, but here is like limited in house, right? Like housebound, and the language is for sure it's one of the barrier. They don't communicate in English, and I see the huge gap.
Thanks so much, Tech, for sharing that. And I have to say that I've worked with people who are illiterate, so they have little to low education, but they have the most amazing experiences and stories and journeys to share as well. So just because their education is low level doesn't mean that they don't have anything to teach us and things that we can learn from them, because they sometimes they're the most resilient, really, when you don't have.
They teach the family values and cultural
Absolutely.
stuff to young
Absolutely.
generation. They teach what is respect, right?
Yeah, and yes, you're right. A lot of the ethnocultural older adults that I've worked with do talk about wanting more social, and that's why I say when we think about what resources they need to keep themselves safe or healthy in terms of that healthy aging, they don't want the same resources. They want more social connections.
Yeah,
they want more opportunities to be part of the community. They want more gatherings of people that would make them feel like they do belong. And so those are the things they actually want, as opposed to police interfering, for example, or some of the resources that some of these organizations might have that doesn't make cultural sense to them.
Yeah, involving, the law enforcement is sometimes a triggering factor, right? Like, I mean, they need more education piece, instead of law enforcement, right? So, the way of lifestyle here is completely different. Maybe, they are not aware of it, or maybe the family sometimes. Yeah, but involving law enforcement, sometimes it's triggers because they think that, oh, you know, their children, they think that, oh, we bring here in Canada just to visit and see, new place. And then now you create a problem. So, yeah, it's always something to work on.
Always, always more learning. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, well, for those of you that are left, have a wonderful long weekend. As Dr. Joudi mentioned, we will be back here tomorrow, not today. We won't be back here today. Tomorrow, same time, same place. So have a wonderful rest of the day. And once again, thank you so much, Dr. Joudi, and thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.